it's not quite that I wasn't expecting it. A bit I was surprised by was how tightly written a lot of the jokes were. That a lot of the humour, you can subdivide, like in spoof films, about some of the humour comes from the physicality, some of it comes from the writing. There's an awful lot that comes out of the writing here. There's some very, very sharp and fast one-liners, some very, very, very funny moments that come just purely out of the script. If anything, the physicality is the bit they pull back on a little bit, and it's a fairly straightforward short film in that regard. I've just got back from seeing the 2025 The Naked Gun, and it's better than I was expecting. I am a huge fan of Naked Gun, particularly the first film. I loved the Police Squad TV series. And for a long time, there's been talk about another Naked Gun movie. That there was a while where Leslie Nielsen was going to do a Naked Gun 4. Then it was Ed Helms in the 2010s was going to take on the role of Frank Drebin for a new take on the Naked Gun. Then we got word that Seth MacFarlane was going to direct a version of it towards the end of the 2010s that was going to have Liam Neeson as Frank Drebin. And by the time it arrives, well, Akiva Schaffer is directing the film, and he's got a complete history in comedy. Hot Rod, brilliant. The Watch, wasn't a mad fan of. Popstar Never Stop Never Stopping is outstanding. I love that film, and I really love his film of Chippendale Rescue Rangers. So all of a sudden, I went from I do think you always have to treat a film going into a movie as Christmas Eve. You've got to go in not expecting it to be awful and hoping it to be good. My confidence in it moved up when Akiva Schaffer was announced as the director, and my confidence in it was also moved up when David Zucker came out and was quite critical of some of the choices of it. I was just like, okay, if you're upsetting people involved in the first ones but who had their chance to do the sequels, I'm not particularly concerned about that, really. Dan Gregor Dugmand and Akiva Schaffer have come in to write the film as well, and this new Naked Gun is Liam Neeson as Frank Drebin Jr., so the son of Leslie Nielsen's character. Pamela Anderson as Beth Davenport. Paul Walter Hauser is taking on the role of Ed Jr. And then Danny Huston is the big evil in the film. So as always, I go spoiler light on these reviews, although I'm going to take a bit of a punt and suggest plot is not the top consideration for most of us when going to go and watch these films. Also, I think one of the things that buoyed the confidence of some of us was the first trailer. And I mean, the first trailer is odd because you've got and it's the opening of the film. You get this sequence where there's a bank robbery, and it plays out a lot longer inevitably in the film itself. And then a little girl walks in who turns into Liam Neeson, who then in a schoolgirl outfit is beating people up. All that bit, I was a bit. Then it addresses Nordberg, played by O.J. Simpson in the original film. Nordberg Jr. is played by Moses Jones here, and the gag at the end of that trailer, I was just like, oh, okay. There's some spark here, and I certainly the response I've heard from talking to people about is that suddenly was a kind of switch moment. Oh, this might actually work. So it's all described as a legacy sequel. That is the official thing of it. And so, I mean, we get some plot here, and I mean, there's not an awful lot of point going through the plot per se, short of the fact that you get corporate bastard, in this case is played by Danny Huston, who's got technology, and technology is the antithesis of what Lieutenant Frank Drebin stands for. And so fairly early on, you're getting kind of like the old style guy against the new tech world, ripe for comedy. And I mean, I feel bad even mentioning any of the jokes, which again is why I'm going quite light. I would just suggest keep looking at what things are called. I mean, if anyone's ever seen one of those sports stadiums called the Crypto Arena or something like that, let's just say Akiva Schaffer is not someone who has any shrift with that, and they are having an awful lot of fun. Read every headline. Look at all the small details. Tonally, they've gone for the original style of the film. I think that's important as well, that the titles are different, but so they kind of set their mark. They kind of set their mark very early on with a really good pre-credit sequence. Then the titles hit, and the titles hitting is very funny, but is different to what you are used to from Naked Gun. Stick through the credits if you want, like the end credits, if you want some of the more familiar stuff. And so I kind of got a sense very early on that you're familiar, but going down a little bit more of your own path. So Frank Drebin drinks an awful lot of coffee. There's a dead body to investigate. In comes Pamela Anderson as Beth Davenport, and so there's a mystery there. And of the cast, and it's quite a long cast actually, but of the cast, there's only 3 or 4 who really stick out. And Neeson, I'll address this up front. I thought Liam Neeson was terrific. Absolutely terrific. And he's talked in interviews over the years, interviews that have been, well, yeah, if you followed his interviews, not those interviews, but he's talked in interviews over the years about this might be a very bad career move for him. And he's not sure. There's some kind of, he knew the risk, but he plays it absolutely straight. There's no winking at the audience from him, apart from one bit that's in the trailer. He plays it absolutely straight, and it's absolutely the right way to do it. And so he drinks an awful lot of coffee, so I get total respect there. And then, he has to react to things going on in a very deadpan way, and he does it exquisitely well. Pamela Anderson is having fun with the role. There's not an awful lot to her character, and you go back to... she's not got the character weight of Jane in the original film. But again, I'm talking about these as if they're big monuments of drama, and they're not. She has fun. She's given the room to have fun, and there's one particular sequence that's played out in silhouette where she's as much a part of the fun as anyone. And so, yeah, again, don't want to spoil it. Paul Walter Hauser is a solid choice as Ed, but kind of he's like, I don't know. It's quite hard to talk about him without giving some of the stuff away. You do sit there and think, oh, I do miss George Kennedy and things like that. But again, a solid piece of casting in there, and the whole idea of you cast actors, not comedians, really, really pays off. Danny Houston, I saw him fairly recently going back through Yellowstone. He can do this stuff in his sleep, but he has to smarm, he has to be oily, he has to be, he's the inverted commas, easy to be antagonist of the film. And, he can do, he's got the face, he's got the swagger for it, and it perfectly works. So, but going to my notes here, there are a couple of things in this that really, really, really stick out. And so, again, without going to specific jokes, there are references to things in the past that are particularly a Super Bowl incident. I'm just like, okay, that's good. There's an outstanding joke about an old T-shirt, which is probably best not suited again for this. But also it's having a lot of fun with modern policing and kind of like this old guy in the midst of it. So there's a whole setup, and there's a bit where they introduce, it's like, Frank, are you wearing your body cam? Yes, I'm wearing your body cam. And it takes a little while for the joke to pay off. I'd suggest it's the sequence in the film that had me laughing really, really, really hard. It reminded me of the TV show Line of Duty, where you get an interrogation and playing back body cam footage. And Schaefer and his team, they play it long. And, they keep building it and building it and building it, and the laughs keep coming. I was just like, okay, I laughed more at this than I did in the last 2 Naked Gun films. And so that particular physical bit really stuck out. The bit that I won't say, well, it's not quite that I wasn't expecting it. The bit I was surprised by was how tightly written a lot of the jokes were. That a lot of the humour, you can subdivide, like in spoof films, about some of the humour comes from the physicality, some of it comes from the writing. There's an awful lot that comes out of the writing here. There's some very, very sharp and fast one-liners, some very, very, very funny moments that come just purely out of the script. If anything, the physicality is the bit they pull back on a little bit. And, it's a fairly straightforward short film in that regard. I'd also suggest that towards the end of the movie, apart from, again, one sequence where it sparks, it runs out of steam. So if you look at something like Naked Gun 33 1/3, an obvious comparison point, right? That starts very slow, takes a long time, but builds up to something that really, really works. In the case of Naked Gun 2025, I think it bursts out the traps fast, and I do think it runs out of steam, but also I think it's got an enormous amount more steam than I was expecting in the first place. So by the time the jokes just start to soft, I mean, they abandoned this coffee joke halfway through. It's just like, it's just never mentioned again. I was just like, okay, I don't know if there was a rewrite, I don't know if there was a rework, but what I thought was going to be a running joke all the way through is just kind of suddenly dismissed. And there's one or two little things like that. There's also, I mean, there's stuff going into the end credits which give a clue as to just what a shift they put in. The list of stunt performers is huge. So what I've just said about the physicality is true. I don't think it's much of the humour comes from the physicality as it has done in the past. It doesn't mean they don't try, and so they know that the rules of this are you've got to keep the jokes coming, bang, 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 bang. But they do build some sequences with a lot of stunt performers in there. There's also a lot of CG, a lot of CG names in the credits as well, CG artists and technicians. I'd imagine most of that is the pre-credits bit, which you've sort of seen in the trailer as well. But it struck me, the length of the credits, and there are jokes running right the way through the credits. There's a song running through the credits as well that it's worth listening to, and then stay to the very end of the credits. But the list of all of it gives a clue as to just how much they've gone for it. It's, in fact, Alec Gillis is the creature designer is in the end credits. I can't tell you why, but it's in the end credits. There is a glorious sequence as well involving Pamela Anderson and Liam Neeson as they become acquainted with each other. I mean, I could pull out 3-4 real standout moments that I'd quite happily watch on loop for a good period of time. The film itself is really short, and the first film, if you remember, was really short. I think clocked in at something like 81, 82 minutes or something like that. I didn't time this, but it was gone. I was out the room in under an hour and a half, and that includes sitting through the entirety of the credits. And I think that's something to how spoof movies tend to work at their best. I mean, my favourite spoof movie is Top Secret. I adore Top Secret. And I mean, Top Secret is the one where they abandon, not through choice, I don't think. I just don't think they could crack it. In fact, they've been quite open about it. It's not the one where they can find a narrative thread through it. It's a series of sketches, but you know, Anchorman really is a series of sketches with just a very, very, very thin narrative through it. In the case of Top Secret, the narrative is incredibly thin, but the jokes are so funny, and that remains the top tier of spoofs for me. You look at something like Airplane 2, you know, which is not a great film, but it has some incredibly funny jokes. I mean, it has one of the best sight jokes in it, the William Shatner moment. You'll know if you've seen it. In the case of The Naked Gun, the 2025 version, there is a thin thread running through it. And there is a thin theme running through it of old way of doing it, new way of doing it, you know, the old police squad being abandoned, all of that kind of stuff is just thrown in, and you kind of see it, and you kind of I'd imagine you kind of expect that a little bit. What's really surprising is how well they keep mining this for laughs, that the jokes on the whole work, and some of them are extremely funny. And if I was to rank all of these, I still think Top Secret is my top. You've got Top Secret, Airplane, Naked Gun kind of level up there. Down at the bottom, I mean, you've got those epic movies and that particular. So where am I going? I would put, say, the Hot Shots films are roughly there. Naked Gun 2, 3, roughly there. I think it's quite high up. Really, I'm putting it just slightly above Hot Shot, although there's bits in the Hot Shot films I really like. I think the set in Hot Shots is terrific, but I'm really surprised, and in a good way. I mean, it's a pointless film to put a star rating on, because you're either spoof movies are just so incredibly divisive, and also it's got the good grace and good courtesy to be out of your life very, very fast before you can start thinking about it. But there were bits of this film I was looking forward to watching again even while I was watching it the first time. It doesn't happen very often, but there was a bit where I was just looking forward to taking one of my kids who's as much into this stuff as I, just so I could, and it's the bit where I would just sit back and watch him watching it. And I've got so much confidence in it, having seen it, that he will laugh at that stuff, that I'm already looking forward to it happening. It's more than, I mean, it's a poison chalice doing a new Naked Gun film. The creator, David Zucker, he's not been complimentary he's not been personal about the people involved. He's just like, he doesn't think it's the right thing to do. I do respect that. That's fine. From my point of view, I've just been really surprised that this particular poison chalice is a lot less poison than I was expecting. And you know, real credit to Akiva Schaffer, to Dan Greger, to Doug Mand, for fashioning this, for making this work. There are so many traps it could have fallen into, so many ways it could have gone wrong. And it's not just a case of it dodges a bullet. It's actually a really fun, enjoyable film. It is not a top-tier Naked Gun film, but it gets closer to that than I, and I suspect many others, will be expecting. And the idea of watching more adventures of Liam Neeson as Frank Drebin, and by God, how about doing some Police Squad? Let's get a Police Squad series going. I don't know, just some more adventures with him and him as Drebin, and Pamela Anderson as well. I'm really looking forward to the idea of that. I hope it happens. Obviously, that depends how well this Naked Gun does, but on the filmmaker side of it, I think they've done a really good job.